We should restart.
Can we restart that?
We can.
Because I don't want that counting for my 1 minute of golden bliss. What? Why are you showing me that? Why is it pointed towards me?
The timer has been reset, and Marty, it's right in front of Marty. I always make sure that Marty can see it because...
I don't need it. I'm letting the spirit flow today. That's what I'm doing.
Oh man, you're Jesus juking me? Is that what's happening?
Welcome to the Chaffin Church podcast. My name is Marty Holman, and this is Ryan Thompson. And welcome. We have a lot to talk about, but none more important than high school graduations. Why? Because on the release date of this podcast, both video and audio, it is my 28th graduation anniversary for high school. And I graduated with a full head of hair. My grandparents, both sets. My parents, not my wife or my kids, but I didn't know them yet, but I knew many people. And I went down in my dark green robe and with the pomp and circumstance, 28 years ago. Can you believe that? I mean, time flies. I now no longer have hair. What year did you graduate from high school?
I graduated in 2007.
I'm just kidding. I don't care.
And
2007?
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, it was the year that I switched from MySpace to Facebook, and yeah, a lot of good things were happening that year. I was just coming out of my emo music phase, you know.
Who was your favorite emo music band?
I think my favorite was probably Thursday, or the early November. No, Thursday was the name of the song. Taking Back Sunday. It's been so long. See, Taking Back Sunday was the name of a band, and then the early November was probably my other favorite.
I really liked. I think this was an emo band. Making April. You familiar with them? I'm
not familiar with Making April, but I don't disbelieve you. I didn't listen to everything in that genre, but yeah, maybe I was more punk rock than emo in particular. But yeah, what kind of music were you listening to your senior year of high school?
Wow, what a great question. I mean, the early 90s were filled for me with change. I was finally listening to the 92 and 93, listening to the radio, whereas before I was just listening to Michael W. Smith.
It was early. I think was it just like lots of unnecessary saxophone playing and things of that nature?
No, well, so you're talking about like a lot of like R&B was starting to move into popular music.
Oh, yes.
SWV. Who was the band like SWV? The girls, they were super popular. Well, SWV did I Get So Weak in the Knees, I Can Hardly Speak. And then PM Dawn had some really great stuff. I Die Without You, Looking Through Patient Eyes. And there's just some good R&B there. The hair bands were starting to like land the plane. Mm-hmm. So there was Mr. Big, one of the last hair bands, and some good stuff. But
yeah, I will admit I have not heard of any of that.
None of those.
I
mean, Bryan Adams. You've probably heard of Bryan Adams.
Yeah.
So he was big then.
I've probably heard the songs even, but just by name, I don't.
Genesis.
I'm the same way on Spotify. Like I create a new playlist once a quarter of like my favorite tunes, and people are like, "What are you listening to these days?" And I'm like, I don't know. Here's a link to my playlist because I never know the names of the songs really.
Really?
Yeah, I'll take like maybe the top band at a time, and that's the only name that I know.
All right. So cool. When you graduated, what were you listening to?
When I graduated, I think I was, listening to a lot of what was the name of that? The All American Rejects was big,
yeah.
My junior year, but I love them so much. I kept listening to my senior year.
Such a good band.
Like John Mayer was one that sort of out of my wheelhouse, but he was so good it just didn't matter.
Musically, he is outstanding.
Yeah, so definitely.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us on our podcast today. We have a lot to share. We have the message, of course. It's going to be in Romans again. And then Mark Hara from the nonprofit organization, the Oak and Sparrow, will be joining us. And he's going to be, I'm just going to warn you, podcast listeners, he's going to be joining us right in the middle. Like if you're in the video, he's going to just come in the back, these back doors, and join us. And then right now, we're going to go through the history of Chaffin Church. A lot of you have talked about how interesting it has been. We've picked up a lot of listeners. So we're going to talk about 1953 to 1978, which is basically year 50 to 75. And the 50th anniversary was supposed to be celebrated in 1953 with our good friend Pastor Wallace Cedarleaf residing, and things were beginning to grow. But on July 9th of that year, devastating tornadoes rushed through this area, killing 97 people and injuring hundreds of others. And some members of the church lost their homes or had serious damage. I mean, can you imagine, like, a lot of tornadoes just... I remember being at my barber is right down the road in West Boylston, back when I got my hair cut. Now I just shave it myself. Uh-oh. We're being interrupted.
Oh man, was that moonwalking? Was that what
no,
that
was
was?
backwards walking.
I couldn't really see your feet, so
I mean, yeah,
you
it was
could have
super
convinced
smooth.
me that it was moonwalking.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Hara is in the house.
Mark Hara, everybody.
Dude, I haven't seen you since
The
what was
before
it been?
times.
2015?
Probably.
Oh my word. This
Is it really? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe.
I think it was. Yeah.
Wow.
You look very smooth and svelte.
Dude, that's such a good compliment. Smooth and svelte.
I don't remember the last time I've heard a compliment for anybody svelte.
You know,
Seemed
Marty,
like super awesome. Huh?
Marty said a few weeks ago on the podcast that I was, what was the term? Sassy, and what was the other word? I forget.
Initiative.
Yes, that I was sassy and had initiative. That was the...
Oh, it's legit. It's not quite svelte or smooth.
No, I think svelte and smooth. Just take notes. I prefer svelte and smooth.
It's like a 1A and a 1B
sassy.
kind of thing. It's close.
I always delve in the acronyms. So let's see. We have sassy, initiative, and svelte. Sis.
Sis. I'll take it.
There you go. And so, Mark, thanks
Hi.
for hanging out.
Thank you.
Thanks
Mark
for coming. And we just started the history of Chaffin Church.
Oh, cool.
So I had just said this, and I'll redo it, and you can.
I rudely interrupted. Please
No.
continue.
We told them you were going to interrupt. We were
Okay.
excited, and then you came in, and
I'm just
should've-
going to say that you moonwalked in.
Let's call it moonwalk.
Yeah.
You didn't just come in.
the Mark version.
Good call.
Yes.
So they were going to celebrate the 1953, the 50th anniversary in 1953. However, on July 9th of that year, devastating tornadoes rushed through this area, killing 97 people and injuring hundreds of others. Some members of the church lost their homes and had serious damage. So that's what happened. So they didn't really celebrate. It would be their version of the COVID. Like there was no celebrating during that time.
Yeah, that's the opposite of celebration. That's trouble.
That's trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, members of Chaffin were active in assisting and rebuilding and repairing, collecting money and clothes and toys for the families that had been hit hard. Also, during this time, the early 50s, and in the 50s, World War II vets came home and they began to have families. Those children were, of course, baby boomers. And between 1950 and 1960, the town of Holden doubled in population.
Wow.
Yeah, so of course, that translated to amazing growth for Chaffin Church. And in 1955, the church added a second worship service. And then in 1956, they started a fund to build a new addition, not to be confused with the late 80s, early 90s band, New Edition. We talked about music earlier.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the band? New
Yeah,
Edition?
I'm aware.
Okay. He was not. I talked about the music I listened to in the early 90s. Nothing.
That was like Michael Bivins and Bobby Brown.
I mean, I feel like the name New
Hey,
Edition.
it's my prerogative. And I'll do what I want
New
to do.
Edition. Like, what you had to realize as you're naming that, like, one day my band will be 30 or 40 years old, right? We are no longer the New Edition.
I always wonder about that with Boys to Men as well. I mean, like, when did they make the transition from Boys to Men?
like, do you name yourself New Edition in, like, the 80s, and then when it hits 95, you're like, well, we're sort of like, the not so New Edition anymore.
Yeah.
And then 10 years after that, you say we're the old edition now,
Yeah.
and then it's just that.
I saw Petra in the early 90s. And they had been going for 20 years by that point.
Wow.
But they looked great, and they had this great, like, it was in a field, and there were several thousand people there. And then I saw them at Inside Out Soul Festival here years later, maybe about the time you were graduating, 2007. And I drove the van, and I was driving Jeremy Camp, so I didn't drive Petra. But we passed, and John Schlitt, the lead singer, had on leather pants and a white blouse. I don't know how else to call it, right?
Mhm.
And all I'm going to say, my man should have left that in the early 90s.
I don't know. I mean, Petra without the leather pants is not really the same. It's not really Petra.
Did you listen to Petra?
No.
It's
Did you?
beyond. That's beyond belief.
No, but Petra is a timeless name. Like, you can keep that.
That's true. It's a solid name. Good call. All right. Back. So we're talking about history of Chaffin. This is beautiful. So they finished that, and that building, which is back here in the back, was dedicated on the weekend of January 30th, 1960. And 3 months later, so the Reverend Wallace Cedarleaf, who had been here for about 8 or 9 years and who had seen tremendous growth, and the church, was doing awesome and had 2 services and 2 Sunday schools, Wallace Cedarleaf said, "Peace, I'm out."
Why?
He went to go do a mission. I think he went. I can't remember what it's called, but a C something mission in Boston. So he worked in Boston for several years.
This is 1960.
1960. Yeah. So he was just like, yeah,
Cool.
I just thought that was interesting because
So
he had
many
this-
threads you could pull.
What?
You could follow that guy and give a whole history of that guy, probably. It's pretty interesting.
I would like to. It's funny. I like to Facebook stalk. I did Facebook stalk this guy. So he's passed on. His wife was on Facebook. She has passed on in 2017. I found his daughter, who is roughly my dad's age, not roughly, exactly my dad's age. She was born in 1951 or 2. And she actually is living in Zambia.
Wow.
I don't know what she's doing. She has kids who live in America, but she is living in Zambia, and I have a message out to her. She has not written me back or even seen the message. So,
Wow.
Yeah,
there you go.
spectacular.
Yeah.
Stalk more on Facebook, maybe.
I
For
probably.
those listening to the audio, I shook my head in disgust.
We should all use Facebook more often. It's so healthy and good for all of us.
Oh man. So, anyways, that was the end of the big 3. We talked about the big 3, that there were 3 pastors back to back to back that saw really good growth.
But Wallace Cedarleaf, he was the giant among them, even.
I think so. Yeah. The guy before him really did a good job, even though he was there a few years shorter.
Mm-hmm.
But they all had seasons of growth. And so after that, a few interns. They had an intern until Reverend James Williams pastored from 1961 to 1965, and then another interim, and then Reverend Leonard Warner came from 1965 to 1973. Yes, Mark.
I have a question.
I like this.
How are we at the point now where people know personally? People at this church know personally some of these people. Do you think?
I would say yes.
Yeah?
So there are a few people. Mr. Dave Ellis, who is our our church sexton, as it's called.
Yep.
Custodian is another way of saying that. So one of the things we've explained before this is Ann Alt is the church historian. So she has been here since 1951.
Ooh, wow.
Her and her wife came from Ohio.
Cool.
And so that was so she has given us a lot of this information, compiled it.
Okay.
And there's a few others, but mostly those two would be the ones. There's one other one named Maureen Stafford, who lives right next to my in-laws down the road. Yeah, Ray and Angela, for those of you who are part of Chaffin. So, that is awesome.
That's a cell phone faux pas.
Podcast.
This is my first podcast, so
I mean, you did raise your hand. When
just gonna
when
go
you
ahead.
asked a
Well,
question.
that's not
You can't
podcast
answer
etiquette.
the phone. No, we can't let you answer the phone.
Sorry, baby, I'm doing a podcast.
Oh my word.
Please continue, Martin.
All right.
Modern history.
So Leonard Warner came from 1965 to 1973, and these were, of course, the years the Vietnam War took place. And several church members fought in that. 2 church members lost their lives in Vietnam. Carl Hosnander, they called Ricky, died on April 5th, 1968, and Dale Blake on March 20th, 1970. And on the opposite of that, 4 men during that time were ordained from this church. In November of, I'll just give you the names. John Ellis, so I just told you about Dave Ellis. His brother, John Ellis, was ordained. Wayne Gustafson, Bruce Bouchard, and William Alt. William Alt is Ann Alt's son, and he just retired.
Oh,
Retired
nice.
from ministry. So, congratulations, William. Bill, I've met him once, and he's a super nice guy. Super nice. And then one other super important part. In November of 1970, in Christmas of 1971, Anna Pearson passed away at the age of 104. Do you remember that name, Anna Pearson? You wouldn't. Anna Pearson was the first woman married at Chaffin Church.
Oh, yes.
August and Anna Pearson. And she passed away during Leonard Warner's pastorate here in 1971 on Christmas Day. So history is passing us by. History is passing us by. So, November of 1973, Pastor Bob Rock.
Man, that's an awesome name.
I mean, seriously.
I'd go by Rob if I were Robert. I'd go by.
I think his name is
Rob
Robert.
Rock.
Yeah. Robert Rock began his ministry with his wife and his 2 sons, and they bring us to 1978, where the church celebrated their 75th anniversary. The cool thing is, they had a time capsule.
Ooh, cool.
And
No way.
so do I. This is the time capsule.
Open and yeah, that's awesome.
Right? They buried it, and then they opened it up in 2003.
Can you read that for our listeners,
So
Martin?
for our listeners, it says 100th anniversary time capsule, Chaffin's Congregational Church, which I think that's interesting.
Yeah, there's an S.
Did the name used to be
a
Chaffin's?
lot of people add the S, and I don't know why.
November 5th,
So
1978,
do it.
opened in the year 2003. And they did that. However, this is filled with things from 2003. I've opened it up because it was in my office. And
So it has since been looted.
Yeah, somebody looted the
It's been
1978
looted.
stuff and replaced it with 2003 stuff.
yeah,
Maybe it's for
Maybe they intended to bury it.
Yeah.
And they never did.
for the second.
for the second.
Yeah,
oh, that's
for
probably
the
true.
bicentennial.
So maybe sometime we'll open it up, but not for a video or not for the audio podcast.
I'm going
but
to after we turn the camera off.
Mark is going in. So anyways, that's it. I think we'll do this
Wow.
series for a few more weeks. Next week or in 2 weeks, we'll talk about 1978, and then we'll do a week on the future.
So we're leaving off in
think-
1978.
We're leaving off at 1978, and that's where we're at. Yeah.
How many people in this room were alive in 1978?
Nope, not me.
That was a high five for our audio guests.
I hope we last at 104. I mean, right?
We'll see.
We'll see.
Or Jesus returns before that.
Or Jesus returns before then. Come on!
Come on!
We'll talk about eschatology.
It's cool.
today.
So soon we'll get to 1991. When, I don't know when you were born. That's what I was going to say.
I mean, here's the thing, and even Anne mentions this, is that the rest of the history is not uphill, or it's not like it's mostly declining kind of stuff. And she's very honest about that in the history.
That's important.
This is the pinnacle, what we've just, specifically in 1960, but also in 1973, that was the pinnacle of Chaffin Congregational Church.
So next week, the elevator will be going down.
And literally, because they put in an elevator during that time.
Whoa!
You know,
and that was the turning point.
You know,
Elevators and smoke machines.
You know when there's a whole section on elevators being put in, that things aren't necessarily happening as fast as
I mean, if it were an escalator, it's a different story.
When that is the most interesting thing you have going on, you put an elevator in, you know.
Oh, man.
Oh, man. So today, it's time for family reunion. And that's what we call this segment. And where we have somebody who's going to share something with us. And we're like family. Mark and I are like family. Except I have nothing creative to say, but we're like brothers, right?
Yeah, well, except not related. You could say that. We're like family,
Except not related,
but not.
Yeah,
as far as we know, we have an odd geographical parallels in our lives.
Yeah, did you know this? Maybe you probably did. So we each have a connection. We both have lived. Our families have lived in Indiana,
the Hoosier State,
in Tucson,
Arizona,
and now Holden, Massachusetts.
01520.
So I don't know how to look. Sometimes I just want to be honest about this. Sometimes you look, your responses when I tell you things. This is not just today. I'm talking to Ryan now.
I'm afraid of what.
Sometimes you look like, Marty, you're saying that like that's interesting.
I was trying
but
so hard.
But that is the least interesting thing I've heard today.
That's interesting, but it's not. Let's try it again, and we'll let Ryan react exactly how he actually should have reacted. All right, ready, go. We have an interesting geographical parallel.
No, you don't. It's not interesting.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. It makes me feel
really
good.
like of all the human population, how many people have lived in Indiana, then Tucson, then Holden, Massachusetts? No one. Me and Marty.
It is a convergence of of chance.
And that is as exciting as it gets. But I'll take it for today.
There you
Tuesday
go.
afternoon.
Coincidental.
Yeah.
I'd say.
Spectacularly coincidental.
Yes, spectacularly. Anyways, Mark started a nonprofit organization called the Oak and Sparrow Ministry.
Oak and Sparrow Ministry. Technically, I will accept Oak and Sparrow.
Okay, okay. And so, Mark, just being honest. What's it about? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Thank you for having me,
Yeah.
Marty and Ryan. I'll expect some big reactions. I'm just kidding. No, dude. So Oak and Sparrow Ministry. I mean, this is my wife and I started this. I mean, it's been 3 years ago now, and our goal. So this is the before times, right? Pre-COVID, as things were. We felt it in our lives as people get busy. And Jesus gives the parable of the sowers, right? Sowing the seed and all that, and life chokes out certain seeds, right? We realized that we needed a place to escape, just kind of like get away, have some quiet, a spiritual retreat. And we've also realized, both my wife and me, that we were both passionate about providing that for other people. We would have family come visit from Indiana, potentially, and they, whenever they appreciated the time, the quiet time where they could stay at our house and where it was just peaceful, they didn't really have to worry about anything, and they would thank us for it. It was more meaningful to both my wife and I than we expected. And so we were like, jumping ahead a little bit, we were thinking and praying on that, and we were like, how can we provide that to people who have no other means for it, or just like need to get away, and how do we also just like I don't know, kind of take a big, bold step in our faith and try to show Christ to other people in a very giving way and just like shooting for something pretty selfless. And it was, so ultimately we said, let's provide some space in nature for a Christ-centered spiritual retreat free of charge to anyone, pending like kind of an application process, so it's not completely abused, right? And so therefore, we bought some land in a town called Reedsboro, Vermont, 2-hour drive from Holden. Actually, a very pretty 2-hour drive. You've driven it.
It's beautiful.
It is. It's mostly back roads. And 6.8 acres of land in Reedsboro, Vermont, on the side of the hill in the Green Mountain National Park, a plot of woods, and we went from woods to a cabin, and we're still in the process of building the cabin. So this is 2 years ago. We're 2 years in, close to finishing the cabin, and the goal here is to provide that as a spiritual retreat for anyone. Starting out, the goal is to start out kind of with a soft launch. This is longer than an elevator pitch, longer than this elevator pitch. Unless your elevator is like 100 stories. But the goal here is like to do kind of a soft launch where it's word of mouth, where people who need to get away, need some space, can just take this place. My wife is putting together some like Christian material, right? So the kind of in 3 categories, where number 1, I'm not a Christian. I'm just like kind of seeking God. Whatever that means, right? That's open to those people. It's open to anyone, right? And so the goal is they can take some stuff off the shelf and just learn. Or I'm a Christian, but I'm new. Like I'm a relatively new Christian. I'm just trying to kind of figure all this stuff out. There's some documents and material for that, and maybe some studies, some devotionals, that kind of stuff. Or I have been a Christian for years upon years. I feel like I'm very mature, but I just need to get away. I mean, we've already had people, even while it's under construction, come and stay. We've had people who are grieving. We think that we'll actually have a lot of people who are going through some grief and just need to get away, seek this place out. So it's become our passion, front to back. We love it. I'm up there every flipping weekend, almost, swinging a hammer. So that's fun, right? It's fun and frustrating. It's everything that a 2-year cabin build project with your own 2 hands would be. But just this last weekend, our boy Mario the plumber gave us running water inside. There's running water as of last weekend, which is a huge step. So that's Oak and Sparrow ministry. There are a lot of ministries out there that are similar to that, like like an escape, a spiritual retreat for pastors, for people in the ministry. Yeah. And of course, like pastors and people in the ministry are welcome. Yeah. But we're more than that. So we'll just open it up really to anyone. Soft launch will be by word of mouth, and then when we have like a full launch, it'll be a website where you could, with a booking tool and kind of an application process, so people just don't use this as a party weekend kind of getaway and just abuse it. Yeah. Right. So we'll have an application process, a vetting process by the board. We have 7 people on the board of directors, and then but other than that, I mean, it's so assuming people don't abuse it, we'll just let them stay. And I'm sure it will be abused from time to time, but this is in the name of Jesus. Here's a free spiritual retreat. We've talked to a few people about it, and they don't get it. There are a few people. There's one guy in particular here. Well, a lot of people it resonates with, and I'll say like a lot of Christians it resonates with. There's one guy in Holden that we just talked to. The guy's awesome, and he said, Mark, like I really like what you're doing. I don't get it, but I'm in. And he's donating some stuff. He's not a Christian. He thinks we're nuts. You know, I mean, he thinks this should be an Airbnb, you make a lot of money, and blah, blah, blah. And he thinks we're nuts, but he's also, I think it sparked something in him. And so that's the kind of thing, like I want to be weird in the name of Jesus to other people. I'm cool with that. And if this is my way of doing that, then yeah, it fires me up. I've been talking, so that's my 3.5 elevators worth.
So most of this is going to be word of mouth.
It definitely in the beginning. Yeah. I mean, we have a face. If you want to stalk us on Facebook, you're welcome to. We have a Facebook page, Oak and Sparrow Ministry. We have an Instagram. You can keep up with the build and all everything that's going on Facebook or Instagram, Oak and Sparrow Ministry. We have a website, so you can Google us and look us up as well. It's just static. It's just it's a placeholder, but it's got our beliefs. It's got our vision statement, and it's got some old photos. But eventually that will be more than just word of mouth. It'll be, we'll people will find us through Facebook and Instagram and find an actual live website and a booking tool, application tool, that kind of stuff. But that's future state.
Wow.
Yep.
When are you thinking of the soft launch?
Our goal is late fall this year, which is just in time for Vermont winter. I get that, right?
But there's heat.
But there's heat. Yeah, there's heat.
But
Yeah,
then again, that's the perfect time for a soft launch, right?
you're exactly right. In case you trip and fall, you've just fallen in snow. But it is. I mean, yeah, it'll be good. I mean, in the fall time, hopefully we'll have some people come and stay, and then in the winter time, I don't expect it to be very busy. But yes, there's heat, propane heat, or wood stove if you so choose.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when you tackle something like this, typically there are huge obstacles. Talk to me about the obstacles.
Oh man, gosh, the obstacles. I mean, I mean, I've told Andrea, my wife, before that my job has prepared me for this in a lot of ways. I work for a medical device company, and we launch new medical devices, and a project is like 3 to 5 years. They're long-term projects, and you're in the middle of one. It's just like a grind, and you have to keep the end in sight. So, I mean, obstacles that we've run into. The town. Well, it's interesting. The town was confused by us. Reedsboro, they're like, "What the heck are you doing?" And we ultimately had to put in. We weren't planning on a septic system, but we had to put one in by the town, right? So that was like, whatever, $25,000 that we didn't expect. I mean, so like big obstacles there.
Wow.
But the town has been really cool. They've actually I think some people like what we're doing there too. They've actually turned out to be really cool. I'm a huge fan of Reedsboro. I mean, the current obstacle, there's obstacle after obstacle, right? I mean, the current obstacle right now is probably twofold. Number one, I don't know if you've noticed, the price of lumber is just insane. Yeah. So by the grace of God, we've got like most of the thing done with, before all this stuff happened, all this stuff went down. And, but there's still a porch to do and a lot of lumber to buy. And so it's going to be pricey. So there's that. And, volunteers, COVID didn't help with volunteers. There are a lot of weekends where I'm up by myself, like, sawing and hammering and all that kind of stuff. And that's just kind of a constant obstacle. We love to have people, but I understand it's a 2-hour drive. It's not easy.
Yeah.
So, when there's anybody there helping, I'm always amazed at the end of the weekend how much we got done. Right?
Yeah.
So that's an obstacle. I could go on and on about the obstacles, but those are the two current obstacles.
And then your biggest joy so far to this point?
It is when we talk to people about it, and they're almost like I just described with this guy in Holden, when they are confused but excited. There have been a couple times where people have been surprised at the giving, and it's fun to say, yeah, this is free for the taking in the name of Jesus. Here you go, right? And it's those conversations that I love, that I really love, especially with non-Christians, because, for one reason or another, we in the United States have a reputation that's maybe not great as Christians, and this is hopefully turning that on its head. Of like, I don't care, like whatever, who you are, what you've done. If you treat this as a spiritual retreat and you're seeking God, and whatever that means to you, go for it, take it, it's yours.
Wow.
So yeah, it's the conversations that are really, really light my fire.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ryan, any questions since this is the first time you've seen him in this? I don't think have I told you about Oak and Sparrow yet, or is this?
Well, I heard about it in church the other day. You
Oh,
mentioned
okay.
it. Or was that on the podcast? I don't remember. One of the two.
Mention it all you want.
Yeah. You get a lot of free advertising out of us for sure. Yeah, when can I sign up? I mean, that seems like a really cool thing.
Yep.
I love, like, people think I'm crazy, but I love like cold weather. Like I hate.
You are Swedish.
Yeah, I am. So, but I hate hot weather. Like my body does not do well with heat.
Yeah.
And so I would love to go up there during the winter.
Okay,
Just
awesome.
be like, whatever the cold, week of winter is in that part of Vermont, you just let me know.
It is kind of fun when you're up there and it's freezing cold. I mean, I've been in there when the cabin is 20 degrees indoors, and it's, but you're lighting a fire and it warms up relatively quick. We now will have, it'll be easier than that now. Now that we have propane, like Yeah, come on up in late January.
That'd be cool.
One more question. So when did this idea? And I remember when you told me, but I don't. And I'm usually very good with dates. When did this idea germinate in your minds?
Yeah, if you're asking for a date, I don't know. But it was, remember back when we did the Passion Survey?
Yep.
And there were,
So maybe the fall of 2018?
It may have been 17. It was warmish weather. Do you think it was 17 that long ago? It may have been 18.
I mean, I don't think it was before that. I mean,
Yeah.
the Passion Survey may have been 17, the summer of 2000.
Well, that's when it sparked.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, actually,
Alright.
maybe it was that. Yeah,
Okay.
summer. Because the goal was for people in the church to think through what they're passionate about, whatever the heck that is, and then think about ways to. So it was just like to get the juices flowing. What am I passionate about, and ways to use that for Jesus, right? And so there was a survey that we all filled out, and then we kind of talked about it, broke up into groups and that kind of stuff. And my wife and me had something similar that we didn't expect. Like we both it really resonated with what I was saying, where people would come and stay, and they had a quiet place, and we liked to provide that. It's like kind of hospitality, but not really. Like, I mean, I'm not really normally one to be like, hey, come on over for dinner, right? Like, I'm not normally that. But the quiet space and the quiet getaway into nature and all that kind of stuff, and some way to provide that. My wife wrote something similar down on her passion survey, and so did I. And we had never talked about that with each other. So it was like a weird kind of like, oh, we're both passionate about that. We've been married at that point for like easily 15 years, and we'd never talked about it. And that's what sparked it. So Andrea's, my wife's question to me was like, what can we do to stretch? Like, what can we do to really chase down this passion? And it got the wheels flowing, and wheels turning, juices flowing.
Juices flowing?
Yeah, wheels turn and juices flow, and got to this ultimately.
Nice.
Yeah,
All right.
It's really
fun.
cool.
Yeah, it is super cool. It's super cool. So,
Well, and then
you're welcome.
I believe the dates we've come up with are July 3rd and July 10th. We are going to take two groups to Oak and Sparrow.
Yeah.
For, I think, are they overnight? Did we talk about that, or
We
just
didn't really talk
Saturday?
about that. I mean, it can be either.
Okay.
It can be either.
We'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, we'll have to play that.
But those weekends, Chaffin will be sending groups to Oak and Sparrow to do things like hit hammers
It's gonna be awesome.
and yeah, it will be awesome.
Yeah, we've got landscaping to do. I
Yeah.
mean, so if your skill set is shoveling mulch, you're in. We've got porches to build. We've got some sanding to do. We've got some staining to do. It's all lots of stuff.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Can
course.
I just say before we move on?
Yeah.
When you say Oak and Sparrow, it just, every time it reminds me of Thor and Oakenshield from
Oh, I didn't connect that, but I appreciate that.
What?
Thorin Oakenshield was a character.
You don't know
from
Thorin?
The Hobbit.
Borin, Ballin,
I
Dwallin,
don't remember it. No.
Ori, Dory, Nori, Oing, Bloin.
I have no idea what's happening. right now.
Thor and Oakenshield. Yeah, he's from The Hobbit.
Yeah,
He's a
he
dwarf.
he
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
he was getting
I saw the movie.
killed by someone, and they broke his shield. So he picked up like an oak branch that had like a bend in it, and he used that as a shield. So his name was Thorin
Thorin
Oakenshield.
Oakenshield.
from now
He's
on.
already claimed the first weekend, by the way. Thorin is our first guest. At
Oh
Oak and Sparrow.
man,
Yeah.
that is. I mean, he's dead, so that's kind of weird. But I'm very happy for you.
Is he, Ryan?
Oh no.
Is he? Oh man, opening up the time capsule.
I'm
Just kidding.
Really glad it turned into Lord of the Rings. I really appreciate
Yes.
that. And I wasn't the one to do it. Usually that's me.
Are you the one that has seen all of Lord of the Rings in one night, or is that a dream?
Oh no, yeah, that's me. I used to do that every year. It was a marathon, extended versions. I don't play around.
Yeah,
with
the
it.
extended, the 3.5
theatrical.
hour versions.
Yeah, it was in the dead of winter. We'd have people over and we just burn
so
through
much fun.
12, 15 hours worth of Lord of the Rings.
I've only done something like that once, and it was I watched with my father-in-law and with Steve
Hutchins.
Hutchins. I almost said Harvey, and I'm like, it's not Harvey. And
You watched Lord of the Rings with Steve Harvey? That sounds like a spectacular night.
no, we watched all of the Defenders on Netflix.
Oh, wow.
which was so disappointing because it wasn't very good.
I haven't watched any of them.
Like the individual ones, a couple of them are awesome, like the Daredevil and Jessica Jones. But anyways,
I used to do it with 24. We used to watch
Oh,
24 episodes in 24 hours.
Yes.
You know,
So
they're
good.
45 minutes when you cut out the commercials.
you
It's
gotta have
actually
like
18
potty
hours,
breaks and
so-
stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
We sorry, I have one more 24 story.
No, please.
Back when like Blockbuster was a thing, right? And like
Yes.
the first season of 24 was out. The local Blockbuster in like near Bloomington, Indiana, where I used to live, you could go in and rent the entire season for like one rental. And like the entire pack, right? And we're like, you can really rent this whole thing? And the lady behind the desk was like, yeah, who's gonna watch it all though in 3 days? And we're like, my wife and I went home and burned through them all. And
You
were
know
like, we
how
were
dedicated.
yeah.
You have no idea.
What's my name?
All right,
Mark.
go into the message. How many times have you attempted to exact revenge on someone who has hurt you?
I'll look at Ryan instead. I made eye contact with him already.
Ryan, did you try to exact revenge on him?
No, man. I'm
Have
just,
you ever exacted revenge on
I'm
anyone?
just bored. I don't do revenge. No, I'm just.
Wow, you are. You're.
I don't do revenge
It's
because I'm
like
just bored.
I'm the generation below you guys.
No, I don't think I've. I mean, clearly, like growing up with a brother and sister in my age range.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that, like on a a minor level, but.
Ever a passive aggressive thing or anything you like?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I have in my adulthood like ever been like, oh, I'm just totally gonna get revenge.
Yeah.
Because that person is a jerk. Like I don't think I've really done that particular thing.
Have you?
Yeah, I bet like a million billion times, like almost
Really?
like almost subconsciously. You're right. You're like you do something that is passive aggressive. Like I don't think I'm like out punching people in the throat, but I am passive aggressive, like ignoring them or avoiding them or just like being a jerk, just snubbing people.
That's a really good point. Like I don't. For me, the problem isn't that I don't get angry because I do. The problem is I just lose my intent to inflict pain on them after a while. I'm just like, yeah, that just sounds like too much work. I don't think I'm gonna do that. So I'm a horrible person, but I'm also a lazy one. Is what I'm saying.
Okay, that's fine.
That's where laziness pays off.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, when somebody does something to you, your initial reaction a lot of times is, well, those people, they're not worthy of my friendship. They're not worthy of me. But what Paul says our reaction should be, unfortunately, is the opposite. He says, no matter what happens, make yourself, we see this in Romans 12, make yourself a sacrifice. You are not better than you are, so don't act like it. I mean, he literally says that. Well, I mean, he says it in the New Living Translation that way. And the reason he's saying this, as we look at Romans 12, is because even though we don't like it, and even though it doesn't seem fair, humility really is the cornerstone of living the Christian life. A lot of times, I have not extended humility to my to those who have like done me wrong, as it were. And so Romans 12, I'll read these passages. I'll first read 1 and 2. And it says this: and so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all he has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind you will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship him. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. So then a little bit later in Romans 12:9, he says this: don't just pretend to love others, really love them. Hate what is wrong, hold tightly to what is good. Love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. Never be lazy, but work hard and serve the Lord enthusiastically. Rejoice in our confident hope, be patient in trouble, and keep on praying. When God's people are in need, be ready to help them. Always be eager to practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Don't curse them. Pray that God will bless them. Be happy with those who are happy and weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with each other. Don't be too proud to enjoy the company of ordinary people. And don't think you know it all. So essentially he's saying, conquer evil by doing good. In other words, the way to conquer evil, the way to ultimately conquer the stuff that we hate, like sin and evil, is to do good, even and especially when you are facing evil. Now, here's the catch. When the Bible says doing good, the way it's speaking about is not based on the way you feel, but what is actually good or the right thing to do. So in other words, revenge feels good, right? Allowing God to handle the situation is the right thing. Gossip feels good. Praying is the right thing. Praying for that person. Complaining feels good. Working hard to make the situation better is the right thing. Doing everything yourself feels good. Working as part of a greater community of believers is the right thing. The irony of this, though, is that many times what feels good in regards to how you treat others turns bad later on. And the thing that feels bad now, the right thing, like keeping your mouth shut, or taking the high road, that usually turns out right in the end. Do what is good, not what feels good. So I just probably need to say this, and maybe this is not important. It is a side road. My kids are actually in this room right now, and they've been walking through the camera angle, and they're making a lot of noise. So we're just being authentic here. I could yell at them. Shut up! But
No, man.
I'm glad you're here, sir. I'm glad you're
Thinking how
here.
good they were.
We got to practice hospitality, you know?
It's true. So I'm going to bring you on in a few minutes.
Yes.
And we'll see what kind of things. Anyways, this isn't cut and dry. This is hard, like, because my natural self wants to take revenge. Right?
What's that look like? Oh, wait. Am I allowed to ask questions?
Yeah, please.
I
do.
can't ask questions during a sermon normally. But,
Yeah,
this
but
is
this-
cool.
yeah.
What's revenge look like for you? When you do that?
Oh
what do you-
man. One of the times I had one time early in my ministry. I'll do it early on in my ministry, and the later one. Earlier one time, there was this guy. I was broke as an early pastor. I had no money, which is way different than now.
Rolling deep.
But early in my ministry, I basically, I might have made $100 a week or whatever, sometimes 200 a week. And one time I did my taxes and I got a ton of money back, like $1,400. I was like, wow, this is great. I should do my taxes every year. And it's kind of a joke and kind of not. So I got all this money. And then my pastor at the time, he asked to borrow the majority of it, like over $1,000, which for me was a big deal.
This is your boss at the time.
This is my boss at the time.
Oh, that's an interesting ask.
He asked to borrow $1,000. Yeah.
I don't think I've
I mean,
heard
it
the
gets
story
worse
before.
because he ended up using it. Like this is, I won't tell you his name, but he ended up using it to get gifts for his girlfriend.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah, it was like
Yikes.
Yeah, it ended
That's
up being
ugly.
really
That's
bad.
ugly.
And I realized like that all went down like really quick. Like in April, I let him borrow the money. In May, it came out that he was having an affair, and I talked to him. He said, "Well, I really don't have the money," and I realized I was never going to see the money. So I ended up several months later having to call him and saying, "Listen, I understand I'm not going to see the money. I have to forgive you." So I did that, but I really did. I hated the guy for years. So literally, I hated the guy. And that ate me up inside. That was early on. I think later on, a discussion might be. I mean, we could talk about Next Level Church.
Good.
Okay. And how I was hurt by them. This is one of those weird things where I didn't do anything to watch their church, because it was theirs at the time, go under. I could have done something maybe to stop that bleeding. Maybe spoke out in support of them. I just didn't feel like I could. And where I did disappear and try not to be a part of the gossip machine at the same time, that's one of those, I don't know. I don't know whether, like...
Still wrestling with it.
I think I will be for years.
Yeah.
It's one of those really difficult scenarios because, I mean, he says it, pray for those who do evil. And I won't say I didn't pray for them, but I certainly didn't pray for church growth in that scenario. I don't know. I'd be interested to hear your opinion on that.
Well, on what?
On that story. I mean, you know the story. You were involved.
I mean, this is Paul brings it in this passage.
Yeah,
I mean,
really does.
Paul brings it, and I think we're called as Christians. I think, I mean, rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn, right? And and that's super important, I think, across the board. For Christians to treat everyone that way, but it's extra hard to treat like enemies or former enemies or whatever. It's hard to rejoice with them. Yeah. It's hard to mourn with them. Yeah. Sometimes you're doing the opposite of whatever. You're rejoicing when they're mourning or vice versa, right? Yeah. And that's, so I don't know. So if you were to, rejoice, if you were to really, truly, completely chase down what Paul's saying here, maybe you're praying for right and good preaching and right and good, healthy, Christ-centered, relationships in that church and growth, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. That's hard to do. That's hard to do with people who've like deeply hurt you.
I think where I've come to it is, and you hit the nail on the head there. I think where I've come there is basically believing that I'm praying for the individuals in that church who I know. I mean, I could pray for the people I don't know, that they would come to maturity in their faith. And
it's not like you were praying.
That's a good prayer.
It's not like you were against the growth of the larger capital C church across the world, because you were upset. Like that's that is different than
that's an interesting point.
Like, hey, maybe some of the things that these people are doing is harmful. And I need to pray, like your old pastor who borrowed the money from you, right? And he was funding what it turns out is just like, deeply sinful and hurtful activity with the money that he deceptively borrowed from you, Yeah. And then he never gave it back, right? So like, I think there's a real. Of course, righteous anger is a thing. You should be angry. Anger just being our human response to our will being blocked. But I mean, I don't know if either of us can really sit here in judgment over those situations. But what I find interesting about what you're saying, Marty, in particular, is like, it's not just like you don't have to just be like a bad actor. Like revenge is not, sometimes revenge is more just about just raw unforgiveness than it is about like taking specific actions to harm that person or their standing. Sometimes it's just, it's about your own intentions, right? Like what are, like, are you actually wishing this person or this organization well, And I think for some people, it takes time. It takes time to be able to wish that person or that organization well.
Yeah. And you're not necessarily, I don't think Paul's sitting here saying, pray for blessings to be bestowed on people who are liars and cheaters and betray your trust. I don't think he's necessarily saying that, but he is praying, pray for their healing and their guidance in your direction. Nothing you did was sinful, right?
But there are things you can always pray for. You can always pray for wisdom.
Yeah.
For that person,
Healing,
that organization, healing.
Yeah.
There's definitely a couple things that, regardless of what's going on, you can at least blanket it with that, right?
Yeah.
So, now, I don't know. I think hearing those two situations. I don't know. I don't know if you could have done it much better. I don't know. I mean, I don't think. I don't think you could have.
I don't think you were wrong. The other thing that sticks out to me from this passage too is that Paul says, "Do good." It's not like a stand idly by and let things happen. It is like a actively do something, do good, right? And that's also hard, especially when it comes to like broken or damaged relationships.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think doing good, saying it that way, a lot of times Christians in general in America have a problem actively doing, because so much of the time they've been taught to passively watch.
Yep. Amen.
Right? So
Yep.
and that's so even your story about being called with your wife to this Open Sparrow ministry is super important, because you were kind of on the sidelines and then boom, here's what we're doing. We're actively doing good.
Yeah, dive into the deep end. It's true. I mean, we shouldn't look at Pastor Marty and be like, he'll do good on our behalf because he's a pastor.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily what we're called to do.
Okay, so here's why all this is important. We're going to get down to the end here. Doing good, the way Paul says to do good, makes you a living sacrifice. If you fight evil with evil, you're not sacrificing, you're making yourself feel good. And the end result of making yourself feel good as the ultimate point is evil. So I'm going to skip a lot here because apparently my message is going to be long on Sunday or today here and live in person. But you're becoming a living sacrifice by allowing God to change the way you think, not by what feels good, but what is good. So do that today. Work on going past what feels good. And you're going to need people in your life to tell you that and help you, not to tell you, but to help you with that. So talking to some friends you trust, people, and run it by them as well. On that note, we're going to move real fast because we're almost at the end here.
Preaching.
It's been going strong. And
Aren't you thankful for that timer, Marty?
I am honestly, this would be an hour and 20 minutes if I didn't have that timer. A couple of things. Thursday, community cookouts are happening. And so we just had our first one, and that was a blast. This next one is at Alba Irizarry's house in Worcester. And that's on June 10th. June 10th. And those are 6 to 8. Bring some meat and side to share, and we'll have a little cookout and just hang out, spend time together. Next week, here in the podcast and at church, Martin F. Holman will be speaking. My dad.
The Reverend.
And will be here
Martin Sr.
on the podcast. He'll be sharing what I lovingly call his COVID message.
Oh, wow.
And he has a COVID message about his story in the hospital. And so he has actually preached that all over the United States.
When is that
already.
one?
That's on the 13th of June.
Cool.
Yeah, should be good.
Wow.
And then so thank you for participating in this podcast. Mark, thanks for being here,
Pastor
hanging out
Marty.
with us. It's been awesome.
Welcome, the good Reverend.
If you guys wouldn't
Around.
mind subscribing to this podcast and then leaving a review. Apparently it helps us. And so please leave a review, rate and review it with as many stars as you can, unless it's not the truth.
But you know what? The cat's out of the bag, because now they know if they leave us a bad review, we're not going to take revenge on them. So now
We're only going to pray for him.
Yeah, we'll pray for you if you leave us a bad review. You know it.
And then, once again, if you are a part of Chaffin Church and our family, please thank you for considering giving back to God what's already His anyway. And you can give at chaffin.church/giving, or you can text any dollar amount to 84321. Something I have yet to do. I have never used a text, but I know some people who have. They say it works fine. Or you can send it to 155 Shrewsbury Street in Holden. Thank you for your giving. Or you just want to send us money. Can I say that? I vowed to say what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So
You can say that.
or if you just want to send us money,
Sure, it's just another way, right?
just another way, whatever. Anyways, Ryan, do you have any final thoughts about today's episode or things you're thinking?
I don't have anything additional upon what's already been said, but I'm thankful what has been said has been said. So
All right. Sawyer and Scarlett, can you come here, please?
Yes.
Come here. What do you mean, yeah, why? I didn't say why. Oh, they're destroying things. Come on, come over here.
hey, you guys
In here.
actually did pretty awesome.
Yeah, I thought so
Yeah.
too.
I
Amazing.
think,
Can you guys say hi and say bye and actually say, what do you say? What do we say? At the end?
Thanks for watching, Chaffin. That's your good news.
That's your good news. Now
it real,
go
keep it
and give some out.
Yeah.
So you say, that's your good news, really loud.
That's your good news. Now go and give some out.
Peace.